Hey everyone, it's Lillie. Welcome to Recovery is Possible, and with me is Mike.
Hey everybody.
So you know what? We want to start off today with congratulating Mike on completing his exam. He got the Certified Substance Abuse Counseling exam, and you passed, and you are now going to be licensed. Is that correct, Mike?
Well, it's a certification in the state of Virginia to be a certified substance abuse counselor. And that was, for those of you that don't know, Virginia has pretty high standards, and it takes a long time to do. And finally got it, took the exam, and so I'm ready to go.
So, Michael, what's next? After you get the CSAC, what's the next step?
So the next step for counseling, because those of you that are looking to go into this field, you have really the counseling track and you have the social work track. The track that I'm on, the next step in Virginia is called the Licensed Professional Counselor, or LPC. So I'm well on my way with that, and that'll be the next thing. And, so really looking forward to it. It's been a lot of work. Again, Virginia has pretty high standards, which is a good thing, but it takes quite a long time. So that's the next step for me.
Okay. Well, Mike and I were talking about earlier about this significant milestone that he's taken. It's taken you at least a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we were talking about is you had mentioned a trip that you took when you went to Poland. Can you tell me a little bit about that so it'll set the stage for our episode today?
Yeah. So, in recovery, everybody faces those challenges. You face the challenge of relapse. It's really difficult the first year. Your very first year, you have that physiological pull. So not only does your mind want to use, but your body still craves alcohol or drugs too, if that's, but for me, it was alcohol. Very, very difficult in the first year. So that's the challenge. The challenge in the first year is you're fighting the mind and the body. Okay. But as you get years into recovery, and the medical definition of long-term recovery is 5 years. So I'm going to tell a story about when I hit year 6 going into year 7. And I think that the difficulty going into those later years is that you can forget that you were ever alcohol in the first place, because your mind isn't really craving alcohol, your body's not craving alcohol, but there are conditions that can lead to a relapse. And I was fortunate that I had gotten a sponsor. I recommend that you do that if you're in early recovery, and you go to a lot of meetings and you learn as much as you can. And all those little sayings that you hear in recovery, the one day at a time, first things first, tell on yourself, all those little things that a lot of people hate when they first come in. They're like, oh, it's so trivial, it's so childish. Yeah, but I'm going to tell you something, though, that just sort of that repetition and beating it into your head can come into play like it did for me. And what had happened with me was when I was still in my career at that point, and the unit that I was in, we traveled quite a bit, and we went around the world and we taught, and I ended up in Poland. Now, on that particular trip, I had gone to Portugal first, and I'm with some other folks from my agency, right? So these people all knew me. They knew that I was in recovery, and okay, no problem there. But I ended up being selected because somebody else in our unit had gotten sick. They were supposed to go to Poland, but they couldn't go. And since I was already over there, my boss said, hey, well, why don't you just go from Portugal to Poland? And so I did, but I was by myself. Now, I was with people from other agencies, but I didn't know them. They didn't know me. So we're all American, but we don't know each other. So here we are in Poland. And if you've never been to Eastern Europe, there's probably more vodka than there is water available. I mean, it's just lots and lots of alcohol. And so here I am in Poland, and, with the Polish delegation that's hosting us, and then, of course, the people from these other agencies. And when you're on travel like that, people want to host you. They want to have dinners. They want to have parties. They want to go out. We're working, but they want to go out too.
So, Mike, can I just interject real quick? How many years of sobriety had you had at this point?
I'm at 6, and I was going to get to that in this part of the story. I'm at 6. This is like June, July time frame, and my sobriety date is in August. So I have an anniversary come up. So it's 6 into 7. And so there I am, a lot of pressure, let's go out, let's go party, let's go to the dinner. And again, Europe in general, alcohol is very much part of the culture, but Eastern Europe, definitely part of the culture, right? So lots and lots of pressure for me to drink. And so there I am in the hotel room, And people are just asking me over and over and over. And so, like a lot of people in recovery, what starts to happen? You start to think, well, I'm here in this hotel room by myself in Europe. Who would know? Who would know? Who'd know about it? Well, because I'd had so much recovery under my belt, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about, what the ramifications would be. And I started thinking about the other people that I knew. And I knew that I was coming up on an anniversary. And I was not only, I had sponsees, people that I'm working with. And then I have, and I'm the chair of this meeting too. My home group meeting at the time, I was the chair of the meeting. And in a lot of ways, there were a lot of people kind of like looking towards me for guidance in recovery. And for me, that was important. We've talked about that in other episodes where, I felt like this sort of this responsibility to others. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in this particular broadcast as well. And so I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about all the people that depended on me, all the people that were kind of looking towards me, all the people the community that I was a part of. And so I had to face a decision. And in that decision, it was I had to either relapse and then go back to the United States and in my group do a couple of things. Either lie to the people and say that I had stayed sober, or I had to go back to day one in sobriety. Neither one of those were appealing to me. But I had sort of like this feeling that I had to do something. I would have to lie about it, or I would have to tell people. And it didn't appeal to me. And something I'd heard in recovery was, if you can ride that wave of the desire, about 20 minutes, that sort of like that desire that you have lasts for about 20 minutes. If you can just ride that wave and just distract yourself, usually the wave will go away. And there was another element to that as well. My higher power, who I choose to call God, I thought about that too. And I thought, well, nobody here would know, but God would know. And at that point, I had really developed my spiritual life. And I also knew too, I knew enough about the physiology to know that the idea that I would drink and it would be limited to Poland, and the minute I got on the plane, I would stop and sober up. My history had proven that was never, ever the case, and it wasn't going to work. And so that's what I really tied into. And so you and I were discussing over the last couple of days this idea of community and how community plays a part in this and how that was helpful in me in staying sober. So that was the Poland story.
Sure. And so, Mike, when you and I talked about that, you had established yourself well in the community. But we also talked about where that wasn't always the case. Can you go back to the beginning about, not even as far as so much the first AA meeting, but I mean, in the community now that you have within AA, you've got tons of friends, you sponsor individuals. So for the person who might be new, who's maybe early in recovery or isn't even in recovery, what was it like when you what was life like when it came to a community? And then what was it like back then? And then what caused you to finally accept and then start building that community?
Well, addiction's isolation and recovery is community. I mean, you just have to understand that. Addiction is isolation. We say that you give up everything to be able to do one thing. And in recovery, we give up one thing to be able to do everything. And for those of you that say you don't believe in a God, I challenge that. And I'll say that you believe in a God. Alcohol and drugs have become your God. And it's just you and your God. And that's it. You've given up your hobbies. You've given up your life. You've given up your marriage, your careers, lots of different things. We've given that up to worship the God of drugs and alcohol. And when I finally realized that, and you can hear, most of my story in other episodes and other places on the internet, but in my particular case, I was going to meetings in the very beginning because I felt like, I developed a back problem. You were on my back, and I wanted you off my back. So if by going to an AA meeting, it meant that you got off my back, well, then fine. Then I would go punch that ticket. Right.
But you're saying that right now you have a lot of friends in the community. And what
I do now, yeah.
You do now. But what I'm saying is when you first started, yes, I was on your back. You were trying to remove me. But at the same time, you didn't have many friends. And at that time, you didn't really want a lot of friends, correct?
No, because that, just like the hobbies, the job, the kids, everything becomes an inconvenience. If you think about it, it get to the point to where your whole life really revolves around drinking. In my case, drinking. It revolves around that. And everything else is just kind of a distraction from that. So what, am I going to have friends and go hang out at the football game or watch TV or, be in a pickleball club or what? I mean, that would take time. That's time I could have spent drinking.
It's true. But I mean, I think that in your particular case, you like to isolate and drink by yourself, but there might be individuals out there who like to drink with other people, and they have a lot of
in the early
buddies.
Stages. By the end of your drinking,
most don't have.
Can we be honest? Is the disease progresses? If you think about it, it starts that way. You see, and that's the lure of it. The lure of addiction is in the beginning it works. In the beginning it's fun. And in the beginning you're having fun with other people. But in time, the party stops. Everybody else has gone home and gotten serious, but you continue to drink. If you're listening to this podcast and you're at the point where this has become a problem with you, if you're being honest with yourself, the fact is you may go to a dinner party, but your thought in that dinner party is, I can't wait to get out of here so that I can really start the drinking. Because you're not going to drink the way that you want while you're there in front of other people. The drinking's done behind closed doors. Okay?
Even if you're around other heavy drinkers, you still held back?
Sure. Well, the other heavy drinkers aren't at the dinner party. Oh, okay. They're not when you get to the end of alcoholism and you're going to treatment, there's not a bunch of, people just sloppy drunk calling one another and saying, "Hey, let's hang out and play video games." It just isn't happening. You're in your hotel room, or you're in the garage, or you're in the basement, you're hiding bottles, and that's not conducive to hanging out with others and having this is not social drinking. This is alcoholic drinking is what it is. That's what it comes down to. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're struggling, you know what I'm talking about. That's what you're doing.
Well, my part of the community part is, I'm an avid pickleball player.
That's why I use that example.
Yeah. So talking a little bit more about that, when I started getting involved in pickleball during COVID, I went to a number of different pickleball clubs. So I would go to one, maybe either the people that were there or the way they organized things weren't exactly how I wanted. So it's almost like an Al-Anon, you vote with your feet. So over the past years, more and more pickleball places have popped up. And so that brought to mind in terms of what's the association between pickleball clubs and meeting people that are there, establishing those relationships there, and then the tie between going to a typical AA meeting.
Well, we hear, and this is true of me too. I mean, sometimes you go to meetings that you're just like, this isn't my group of people. It's not my vibe. I don't feel comfortable here. Whatever. There's 1,000 different reasons why people won't like a meeting. And, we hear it with the patients in detox all the time. I went to AA and I didn't like the meeting. It was childish. It was stupid. I didn't get anything out of it. It's a religious program. It's like 1,000 different reasons. But the fact is that it's like anything else. Like you said, you vote with your feet. Here, we're in the Washington, D.C. area. There's over 300 meetings just AA, by the way. And that's not including the other types of groups that are out there. That's just AA. If you don't like a meeting, just go to another meeting. And eventually, you'll find your group. You'll find the people that you want to be around. You'll find the people that you connect with. And that's going to be important because remember, something that's important to remember here, you may, in your early days of recovery, you're talking about your drinking quite a bit. No doubt about it. It's on your mind. It's what you're thinking. It's what you're trying to avoid. You're just fighting that urge every single day. And that'll go on for about a year to a year and a half. But the fact is that once you get sober, that physiological pull is taken away, the mental pull is taken away, and you've developed your program, and you've gotten your tools, and you begin to meet other people, and you start to have friendships with other people. The fact is, other than the actual meeting itself, where obviously the topic is alcohol, my relationship with people in AA and other 12-step programs, we actually do very little talking about alcohol because we've all moved on from it. What's happened is over the course of getting sober, you've developed relationships, you've developed community. And you find these bonds, whatever you're into, whatever your hobby is, whatever your interest is, whether it's pickleball, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whether it's working out, you name it, whatever your hobby is, you will find people in meetings that have the same interests that you do, and you make those bonds and those relationships. I'm telling you, my Tuesday night meeting, my home group meeting, I'm routinely there till about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. The meeting ends at 9 p.m. Actually 8:30 p.m. And I'm still there till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and that's because I'll hang out at the meeting and talk to the guys that are there. We're not always talking about alcohol. A lot of times we're talking about professional things, we're talking about interests, politics, whatever they want to talk about. But it's not always about alcohol.
So, Mike, to add to that, one of the things we had talked about is, like I was saying earlier, I like pickleball, right? So when I found a club that I enjoy, when I was shopping around essentially for a pickleball club, it's, and you had brought up this analogy. I was shopping for pickleball clubs, but I didn't give up pickleball. Just like you don't give up your recovery when you're looking for a meeting.
Right.
The recovery comes first, and then you find a meeting where you feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. So there's the analogy there. And then, like you were mentioning earlier, once you find a home group or an area of people or a club where you like the people and you want to invest in their lives, and they're all in the same path of wanting to achieve recovery. You've been in this particular group since what year?
2013, 14.
So there are individuals that have been in that meeting that long?
Oh, yeah.
So Absolutely. You're not going to just be talking about recovery all that time. If anything, you guys start to trust one another, and then you talk about other things. And so I think that when someone says, oh, I don't like that meeting, they're just in the infancy stages. They haven't found that home group where they feel comfortable with, where they've developed those long-term relationships.
And that's because the addicted mind, and we have to understand that addiction is a disease of the mind and the body. And it's a disease, it's a mental illness to a great degree if you think about it. But one of the unique characteristics of it is that it's the only disease that we know of that tells you that you don't have it. And it protects itself. And what happens is your disease doesn't want you to have community. Your disease doesn't want you to have friends. It doesn't want you to connect with others. Because as human beings, we're designed to connect with others. That's why the COVID lockdowns were so devastating, because it goes against how we are designed as human beings to operate. We're designed to be with others. We're not designed to be alone. But our addiction wants us to be alone. And like I was just explaining to you earlier, alcoholic drinking is not about the party. Nobody wants to be at the party. There are people at the party. I didn't want to be with other people. If you're drinking the way that we're talking about, you don't want to be with other people. So that's why, you want to minimize the number of meetings. You don't want to go in person. That's why I really don't like the online meetings. I understand that there may be certain circumstances where that's your only alternative. But I'll tell you, I think it needs to be a last resort, and you really need to ask yourself, do I need to be on this online meeting? Because I literally cannot make it in person. If that's not the case, then you need to be in person, because we are designed to connect. And it is very, very different in person. Very different in person. And when you go to a meeting in person, you're connecting with people before the meeting and you're connecting with people after the meeting. And I'm telling you, that is where the real work in recovery begins. It's not even in the meeting. It's before and after the meeting. That's where the real work is done. And if you're so connected online, if that's all you're doing, you're missing that. You're really only getting a fraction of the benefit that you could be getting.
So, Mike, talk a little bit more about that. Like you said, there's discussions that happen before the meeting, after the meeting. Other than the meeting itself, like you're saying, we're built for community. What's going on that happens in terms of developing that relationship, the isolation? What's going on with the individual that helps them feel better and helps them in their recovery?
Well, I think it depends on the stage that the person is at. Certainly, let's just start with a new person. Actually, my home group, we had somebody that literally, they're off. We call it off the street. They're this was their first, I don't know if it was his first ever meeting he's been to. I don't know. But one of the first, let's put it that way. And he walked in the door, and it was pretty apparent that, he didn't understand the AA culture, the format of the meeting, which is okay. I mean, he came in off the street. That's what we're there to do, to help him, kind of guide him into that. But, you could still see that he was shaky. He was still obsessed about his drinking. And usually those are the people that spend a lot of time talking about the drinking, or people that just walked in the door. You got 15 years in recovery. We're not even thinking about drinking, let alone talking about it. But that's why we're there, right? That's not, by the way, that's another argument to be there in person. Because we have an obligation to be there for when the new person comes in, because how do they know what recovery looks like if they don't see you? Now, I will tell you why it's important to be there in person, particularly for the new person. As I drove up to the church, I could see this. I drove around the back of the church, because this is a church basement meeting, and I see a guy walking, and he's nowhere near the door, right? But you can always tell, like, is this guy here for a church meeting, or is he there for the AA meeting? And I can tell you, I can spot it a mile away. And I rolled down the window and I said, "Hey, are you looking for the meeting?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'm like, I kind of figured that. But he was lost. Well, there was two things. What I found out later, he was also thinking about not going into the meeting. He was kind of lost. But it was, well, if I go check this door over here and it doesn't open, then I'm gone, right? So he's still at that mode where, am I going to go in? Am I going to not? So if me being there, me rolling down the window and saying something to him, guess what? Now he felt like he needed to go into the meeting because I showed him where the door was. And before we went in, I was able to explain some things to him, explain to him how, introduced him to the people that were there, explained who I was, kind of laid out sort of the format of this meeting, explained that every meeting has, it's up to the meeting how they do the format. And, so if he goes to other meetings, it may look a little bit different, blah, 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 blah. Then we do the meeting. Then after the meeting, we were able to talk a little bit more. And it turns out that this particular individual comes from a particular ethnic group. Well, first of all, he's a foreigner. He immigrated here. And he felt throughout the meeting, when he did his share, it was apparent that he was very self-conscious about that. He was very self-conscious about how he looked. There were some very distinct cultural mannerisms and dress that he was wearing that nobody in the meeting thinks anything about these things, but he was very self-conscious about that. And afterwards, I was able to put him at ease and let him know that this is an open, welcome place. He should never feel like anybody in this room is judging him. We're all here for the same reason, and walk through that. And the guy, I've never met this guy before in my life. And do you know that he leaned over and he thanked me and he hugged me. And he said, "Thank you very, very much for this. I really needed to be here tonight." And then he left. But let me ask you, if that was an online meeting, we would have never had that discussion would have not have had taken place, right? Mm-hmm. He'd have been on, he would have said what he said, clicked off, and off he would have gone.
It's definitely much more impersonal.
We were able to, I was able to cover so much more ground outside of the meeting, right? But it goes back to our topic here tonight. It's building community, and we're demonstrating to him the community that he can belong now to, because it's important. It was important for him to feel comfortable. It was important for him to feel like we understood. It was important for him to see sobriety. It was important for him to get phone numbers so he can call people. And that is just so part of the human condition, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that that's what we're focusing on tonight, is that community. But that was the new person. Now you go to the person that's been there forever. You take somebody like me, I've been at that meeting from the beginning. We actually have some people that have over 30 years of sobriety in that meeting. Well, it's the same thing. It's the community. And I think then it sort of shifts. When you're new, you're kind of looking at the new people, and you're looking at them as examples. When you have somebody that has years of recovery, it's the same concept, but flipped. Meaning, remember I was telling you in my story in Poland, what was important to me? Even though it was at 5-6 years, that's still medical, that's long-term sobriety. What stopped me from drinking? The fact that I know that I'm setting the example for other people. And when you become involved in the meeting, and you know that people are looking to you, and they're using you as an example of their own sobriety, that gives you a sense of ownership. And so for the people that are at the meeting that are there for have been in sobriety for a long time, what helps them stay sober is the fact that they know that the new guys and gals are looking to them as an example. And if they relapse, they can do a lot of damage to the new people that came in, if that makes sense. So it's this shared responsibility. And maybe we can pivot to this, why it's important to not only go to a meeting, but be involved in the meeting, because that's where those people are. Their sobriety goes through being involved, being committed, and really, I don't like to use the term leadership in an AA meeting, but you maybe a mentor, maybe.
No, but didn't Bill say that that many times the person who's doing something for others is the one that benefits themselves the most?
Yeah, well, me helping you, like this new guy that came in, right, the other night, his presence in my discussion with him helped me as much, maybe even more than it helped him. He may not stay sober. I don't know. I don't, maybe he'll be back this next week. I hope he is. But if he isn't, it still helped me. And that's sort of like the magic of 12-step recovery.
Well, for you being in long-term sobriety and long-term recovery, essentially it's a reminder that it's a disease. It doesn't ever go away, right? So when you get new folks that come in, you're like, oh yeah, I remember what it was like back then. And
right? You see the rawness.
Mm-hmm.
It always takes you back to, well, that must be what I looked like when I came in here. And because, with years of recovery, particularly if you go, like my meeting, my home group meeting, we don't get a lot of new people in there. So most of the people I'm around actually have years of sobriety. I think that, like 1, 2, there aren't that many people that have less than a year, right? And so it's important. I think it's important to see the new guy every once in a while, because that it's raw and that reminds you of what it's like.
So does it become more like a social group, would you say?
Well, the meaning we're talking about alcohol. We're talking about. I think the difference is in early recovery, you're focused on the disease. In people, when you're around a lot of people that are in recovery, the focus is on the solution. That's when you realize sort of like the balance in the meeting. Is it predominantly new people, or is it predominantly people that have years of recovery? Because the topics tend to, new people that come in, they tend to focus on, they give what's called the drunkalogue, right? They'll spend a half hour talking about, basically chronicling the amount that they drug and drank, and I always thought that was kind of funny, because you're in a room full of professional alcoholics and you think you're impressing us? Really? We know how to get drunk. We're pretty adept at that. On the flip side of that are the people that have been around for a long time, where they rarely, unless specifically asked to give their story, short of that, probably won't ever talk about drinking. What they talk about is what they do to stay sober. They talk about the gratitude list. They talk about the tools. They talk about the tough things they're going through and the things that they did to get through those tough times. They're focused on the solution as opposed to the problem.
Yeah, I agree. Similar if you go to an Al-Anon meeting, because the steps for Al-Anon and AA are the same. And then someone who's been in recovery for a while, what we call recovery within Al-Anon, how do you apply the tools of the program to get through those tough spots that we all have to go through in life?
It's called life. Yeah. And just because you get sober doesn't mean that the tough things go away. In fact, you could argue that life will get a little bit harder because you're more engaged. Because if you're just sitting in your basement or your bedroom and drinking all the time, you're not really engaging with anybody. How much conflict are you going to have, except for your spouse? Maybe your boss. But once you stop drinking and you get involved in life, look at my own life, in recovery. Look at the stuff I've gotten involved in. I've gotten involved in things where it's actually promotes conflict in a lot of ways. So there's a lot more pain. I've had more death happen in recovery than I did when I was drinking, if you think about it. I've had more people die in my life, family members. Job situations, recovery stuff doesn't go away. It continues to happen. So but what I've learned is to be able to get through those things without drinking.
So Mike, you're looking back in time, right? When you first went to your first AA meeting, like you said, you wanted the isolation to protect yourself to keep drinking. And now here you are approaching, almost 14 years.
August will be 14 years, yeah.
And then now you've got more friends than probably you ever imagined that you would have had.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then you would never have even thought about having friends. So for the person who's new, and of course you were there before and now you are where you are, what advice would you give to someone now that you're on this side to encourage them to really not be afraid of taking that step to accept where they are and to embrace community?
Well, in the beginning, it's just, I always talk about militant recovery in the very beginning. In the very, very beginning, if you're in your first year, just go to meetings, go to a lot of meetings. You're going to have a sponsor that's going to tell you do 90 and 90. 90 days, 90 days. 90 meetings in 90 days. I actually did more than that. Sometimes I did 2 meetings a day. There were days, if I had the time, I would do 3 meetings in a day. Lots and lots of meetings. Just go, make it a habit. Meet people. Discern where you're going to go. What's your sort of meeting makeup going to be for the week? Where are you going to go? And start connecting with those people. Then as soon as you can, I would say get involved in a service position. And the reason for that, there's just something in human nature that when we start doing service, well, you then become a part of the meeting. And I've noticed that. You teach. I know you're an instructor, right? And you and I have both been through many in our lives. We've been through many classes. We've been through courses. We've been in boot camp. I went to flight school. You were, all the training that you did in the Navy. Lots of courses where you participate. How many courses did you go and you're just in the class and you're just watching and maybe the instructor sucks, whatever. It's just another class and you move on. But then you and I both became instructors. You and I both did. Did you not take it so much more seriously? You had to, right? Because you weren't just absorbing the knowledge, you're teaching the knowledge. And people are asking you questions. You had to be at class early, right? You are at the class, you're still in the classroom after the class leaves. You have to look at their critiques. There's so much more involved, and you take it seriously. Why? Because you're not just attending the class, you're now part of the class. You are the class. And my sponsor had said to me one time when I was talking about a meeting once, this is early on, that I didn't like. And I told him, I said, I didn't really like this meeting. And he pointed out, and I've told the story before, where basically he chastised me for it. It was like, well, okay, you didn't like the meeting. Then what did you do to make the meeting better? Now think about that. That's sort of like a mindset shift. He says, so you didn't like the meeting. You come out, you're complaining about the meeting, but you didn't do anything to make the meeting better. So guess what? Next week, you're going to lead the meeting. And if you think that what that guy did was so easy, then you show us how to do it. And we'll see how easy you think it is to get up there in front of all these people and do this. And that was a mind shift. And then I realized after that when I got involved in service positions, certainly started, because I started some meetings, founded meetings, and you did too. And when you found the meeting, you then are a part of it. And if something doesn't go wrong, it's on you. If something that needs to improve, it's on you. And when you know that other people are counting on you for those things, there's just something that mentally that gets you to up your game. And so for people, when you ask, what is my advice to people? My advice is get involved in the meeting. Don't just sit back. Don't just sit in the back of the room and listen and complain. Become part of it. Where do they need? Do they need a coffee maker? Do they need somebody to open the door? Do they need a chips person? Do they need a secretary or the person to deposit the money in the bank or to get the literature? Be that person. And whenever they need somebody to lead. That's sort of like the rule of thumb. When somebody asks you in AA to do something, you do it. You do it. You have to become a part of it. And I'm telling you, the people that make it into long-term recovery are the people that get involved in the meetings. But again, it's not, a lot of this is just human psychology, if you think about it. It's not unique to what we're talking about here. It's just whenever you have other people that are looking to you to be an example, you're going to automatically step up your game. if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's all good, Mike. I think, like you were saying, early in recovery, you're just trying to make it, white knuckle everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just fighting the disease and trying to change your current way of doing things because, like you've said in the past, we don't expect you to change one thing. We expect you to change everything. Well, everything's a lot when you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get into recovery. And so, and it's usually not just you. You've got your family. You may have kids. All that infrastructure of behavior and what's going on in life. That's a lot of change going on all at once.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see over time the iteration of how you've progressed and essentially matured in your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
but you mature not just in recovery, but in life.
mm-hmm.
Really, this is a life program. It's not just a recovery program. It's a life program. You become more responsible in every aspect of your life. It's not just limited to your drinking, if you think about it.
And I think that takes some grace, right? I think that sometimes, I know how I was, right? I wanted you to hurry up, right? I mean, I did wait quite a few years for you to get sober, but I think that for your brain to heal, your body to heal, for you to have a mind shift change of how you look at life. And like you said, looking at human behavior and our natural, just who we are as human beings, there's nothing really new under the sun in terms of how we as a body or community function together. And so I think that, talking about this topic is very important,
Mm-hmm.
especially for those who found themselves in a very isolated life.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel lonely now that you're part of a big community?
No, in fact, now you know me, I actually am involved in so many things and with so many people. I have, my problem now is because the exact opposite can be true in recovery. There's a whole chapter in the big book called the family afterwards, and in there it talks about what people in early recovery can be. You tend to become so involved in around so many different people that your problem is you actually don't take time for yourself, and I've been guilty of that. I kind of burn. Look, and I'm no example of how you do this the correct way because, as you know, I'm notorious for burning the candle on both ends, and that's and maybe we should do a podcast sometime on that, and I can learn from it, right? But no, it's the exact opposite is true. I mean, you and I have spent today's a Sunday. If you're watching this or listening to this and you don't know, today's a Sunday, and you and I tried to carve out some things as a couple to do today, but my phone's been blown up with people that I know and it's great. They have questions and they're reaching out, and I want to help them. But what I'm saying is that it's kind of hard to carve time away from myself because I'm so connected with so many other people now that that becomes problematic in its own way, But that's a better problem to have than not have community.
No, but we did something good today. We went riding. You can't really be on the phone while you're riding. Well, you could, but it wouldn't be very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. But I guess the point being is that every day I have people in my network and people that I know that are reaching out, and they do. And as you know, I spoke with them because there's some people that I know that are in crisis right now. What I tell you, we're there for people. And I'm not complaining about that at all. I'm just laughing because if you look at how my life is now compared to the way it was in active addiction, it's the diametric opposite. Mm-hmm. Diametric opposite. There was nobody calling me back then. There was nobody.
All right. Well, Mike, I'm going to turn over to you to close us out.
Well, I really appreciate it. I think this is an important topic. And, if you're out there, please, please, please get community. And at some point, I'm going to talk about cell-phone addiction. I'm going to talk about the internet. I'm going to talk about technology because, I know I've touched on that here in this particular episode. But if you're not going to meetings in person, please do it. You're missing out on a lot if you don't do that because community, human contact is important. So you chose this topic, so I think it's a very important topic, and so thanks for doing that. And we have taken sort of a hiatus from putting these podcasts out, just to take care of some things and some things I need to work on to include like the licensure that we were talking about. So there's things that we've been doing, but we want to increase the number of sessions that we do because there's so much information out there that can help so many people. So thanks for joining us tonight. You guys are part of our family. Take this podcast, and if you know someone that could benefit from it, share it with them. Please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us. And so once again, this is Recovery is Possible with Mike and Lillie, and we will see you next time. Take care. So as I always like to say, I do not represent any group, do not represent anyone other than myself. My only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what I've done because it's helped me and maybe it will help you too. If I've said something that does not apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and help others as well. That's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we hope to impart the knowledge we have gained to others as well. With that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Let us know how we're doing, and let us know if there's any topic that you're interested in hearing about. We'd love to hear from you, and take care, and we'll see you next time.